vamos agora, sem mais demoras, para um dos momentos também especiais desta tarde, em que vamos agora estar à conversa com dois convidados especiais. Carlos Vargas, da UNESCO. Carlos, bem-vindo a Portugal. E Sr. Secretário de Estado da Educação, Dr. António Leite, que vão estar aqui connosco à conversa sobre o papel dos professores na era digital, com a moderação de João Barás. Por favor, Carlos, Dr. António, João, subam ao palco. Uma enorme salva de palmas.
Good afternoon. Sorry for the Portuguese, we changed to English because Carlos Vargas, I think he understands a bit of Portuguese because he's Mexican. But anyway, it's easier for us to make it in English. I have the privilege to be here with these persons. Carlos Vargas is working. I'm not going to present you because I think everybody knows you from LinkedIn already or something like that, but is working at UNESCO on the teacher task force, is the head and responsible for the work on teachers, requalification of teachers, motivation of teachers, the career of teachers, and so on. And I think is one person that is very needed for all of us, and that we would like very much to talk with. And at my right, the privilege to have the Secretary of State for Education, which has been with us in several events, and thank you for that. This support that the Ministry of Education is giving us from 9 years ago, and we have already 9 years, is very important, together with the General Manager of Education, which is very important because it's our support, and it's the reason because we are here together with our partners. I'm not going to be a moderator, just controlling the time, okay? Just controlling the time, because we have things to discuss of 5 or 6 hours, okay? But let's go for it. And the first question is going to Carlos. Carlos, last year you were not here because of the Education Summit in the United Nations, and you were in States at that time, and I know that were fantastic conclusions and fantastic design of strategy for the future of education, which all of us depend in this moment, okay? My challenge for you is please talk a bit about the conclusions of the summit, okay, the strategy that UNESCO wants to follow, and it's up to you. Thank you.
Obrigado, João. Boa tarde. I unfortunately need to speak in English because my Portuguese is non-existent, but I'm very happy to be here. And just to answer the question that João mentioned, and to share with you some of the conversations, some of the commitments of the international community that took place last year in the United Nations headquarters in New York, in the Transforming Education Summit, I would say they were around 2 main issues. The first is to accelerate progress towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm very happy that I don't need to explain the SDGs because all of the different apps and initiatives were actually linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. So as you know, we are halfway through 2030, and we know that we are off track to actually meet the ambitions and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. eradicating poverty, improving health, gender equality, education, sustainability, we're really far off. So the Transforming Education Summit wanted to call the attention that we need to accelerate our efforts if we really want to achieve equitable, quality education and lifelong learning opportunities for all. So that was one of them. The issue is, how do we accelerate? We are not on track. The second was, how do we transform education? How do we make it transformative? Because if we accelerate the pace, but we continue doing business as usual, it has no actual change. So the idea of the transformation is, how do we think about education differently? How do we organize educational provision differently? And what are some of the topics and some of the issues that we are not teaching for right now? So content was around, for example, education for peace, for nonviolence, for non-discrimination, education for sustainable development, for gender equality, for addressing the digital transformation, etc. And the realization in the summit in New York was that teachers are fundamental for these transformations. We cannot really achieve the sustainable development goals without education, certainly, and we cannot have that education without teachers. Now, that was the key message, saying, what is the role of teachers in the transformation of education? So, of course, an analysis, and just last week, there was a high-level panel on the teaching profession in New York to make some recommendations as to how we need to work for and with teachers to make this possible. So what do teachers need? They need plenty of things. Of course, teacher education and professional development are important, but they also need good working conditions, they need autonomy, decision-making power in the classroom, and they don't always have it. So paradoxically, we identify that the teachers are a very important piece for the transformation of education, but we don't confer them with the trust, with the professional development, with the working conditions that they need to actually pursue that transformation. And one of the elements that came through that was very important is that because of this reason, we don't have enough teachers to address, to provide high quality education to all learners in the world. This is not something that happens only in Mozambique, and it's not something that happens only in Korea. It happens throughout the world. In the developing world, in developed nations, we see problems of teacher shortages. There are not enough teachers to teach all of the students that are already existing, not to mention the future demand. So there is quite an issue of teacher shortages that needs to be addressed.
You see, you're touching the points. Well, and I can take this tip about the shortage of teachers and ask to António, what are the main reasons in your point of view for this shortage of teachers? What is the reason that are provoking worldwide this shortage of teachers? Is not just in Portugal, it's worldwide, according to Carlos.
Thank you. First of all, let me say that it is great for me to be here with all of you. So thank you so much for the invitation. It's absolutely great. It's a very good way of ending a working day as it was today. And Carlos talked about what teachers need, and I generally agree with him. And we talked about what teachers need, and we need teachers. That is exactly the question that you asked. Rarely a complex problem has a single or simple source. And that is exactly the case of the shortage of teachers. And because of that, it's even more difficult to solve, because there are many different reasons why, for example, now in Portugal, there is a shortage of teachers. I can't and I won't pretend to know and to let you know what are the reasons all over the world, but Carlos knows that much better than I do. But in Portugal, there are some reasons that we all know. I have some notes because I was afraid not to remember all of them, and probably I won't. But I would remember that in what concerns Portugal, the reasons for the current teacher shortage are complex and from different kinds. At a certain moment in the past, not far away in the past, not in the historic past, there was an idea that there were too many teachers in our country. In every year, we heard about how many teachers got unemployed, how many teachers didn't get a place to teach in the next year, and that was year after year. And I don't know if it was right. The situation was different from what it is today. And why was the situation different 5 or 10 years ago? One, the school population was decreasing. We had less students each year comparing with the previous one. Then the numbers of students in each group or class in classrooms were increased. As a political measure, I'm not going to comment on that. That's fact, full stop. There were serious problems with teachers' careers, and I must say it eyes in eyes with my colleagues that are teachers, some of those problems still exist. I'm not here to deny what reality is. And there were daily news about, for example, violence in schools. It was extremely exaggerated, but that was something that we heard day after day. We know that probably if you switch on your television set today, you will be confronted with dozens of bad news, even if there were hundreds of good news. That's how information works. And that applies to education as well. Then, as a result of that, more than 20,000 teachers lost their jobs. And those are facts as well. I'm not making any comment on that. Those are facts. And because of that, less youngsters chose the teachers' training courses as a possibility to go to university. And universities, of course, acted accordingly, and they also cut on the courses they have intended to train teachers. On the other hand, teachers get old. That is something that is obviously going to happen to us all until a certain point. We know what that point is. And there isn't a good alternative to get old, as you know, right? So we get old. And when we get old, we reach a certain age at which we can retire. And because many of the teachers that work today in Portugal entered at the same time after the revolution in the 80s, they are also leaving at the same time, that is right now. I will have still 4 more years to work, and then if the law is the same by then, I will go to my house and do something else. On the other hand, also because of a political choice, the number of students in each class decreased so that it was easier to teach them and make them easier to learn with the teachers. So, and in the last 2 years, and that is good news, in the last 2 years, the number of students in our country is increasing. Not because we have more Portuguese babies being born. No, that's not true yet. But because Portugal is a place where foreign people decided to live, and they came with their families, and now they are at our schools. And that is great. That is a good problem, but is a problem nonetheless. So those are some of the problems. On the other hand, in some areas, we must say, because it's true, we can't compete with some wages that, for example, the private sector has. I'm not talking about private schools. I'm talking about private corporations. On technologies, for example, it's impossible to compete with what they pay. And on sciences, for example. So that is some of the reasons why we have a shortage of teachers now. I must agree that being a teacher today is not as attractive or probably as sexy as it was when I began working 40 years ago. And finally, we have a certain problem in Portugal that doesn't probably happen in other countries, but we have more teachers on the north and we have more students on the south. And that especially around the area of Lisbon. And that is a problem. I'm not saying that we have too many teachers in the north. I'm from the north, as some of you know. But the fact is that we can say that we have no problem in the north, but we have an enormous problem around Lisbon. So, and that doesn't help when we have to find the solution to cope with this problem.
Well, we are arriving to a question to Carlos. We're speaking about the attractiveness of the profession to be teacher. And the question for the teachers that are here is everywhere like this? In all countries, the factors to be interesting to be teachers is the same in all countries, in Latin America, in States, in Africa. How you can say about it?
Thank you, Joao, and thank you, Antonio, for the reflections. Indeed, the issue of teacher shortages is global, and the reasons are very similar throughout the world. It has to do, I would say, with the material and the symbolic conditions of teaching. Of course, the material conditions has to do with teacher salaries, for example. Are they competitive enough? Do we remunerate our teachers in a way that is concomitant with the importance that we have for teaching? The material conditions have to do with the workloads. You know, sometimes how heavy the curriculum might be. In many countries, we see the curriculum is really ambitious. And sometimes we have more curricular content than days in the week to teach it. So, of course, the workloads, the pressure, the enabling conditions within educational institutions, whether they are there or not, you know, as we said, the contractual conditions of teachers, their salaries, their remuneration, is something that is similar throughout the world. There are lacks in terms of improving those material conditions. But there's also symbolic conditions, because even in those countries where teachers have good pay, teachers continue to leave the profession. And we see that in Finland. I was sitting down with them 2 weeks ago, and they were saying, our teachers leave the classroom too, usually within the first 5 or 3 years, but teachers are leaving the classroom. So it's not only the material, but it's also the symbolic. The symbolic conditions have to do with how much we trust teachers, their pedagogical knowledge, their judgment, how much autonomy do we comfort teachers to make decisions in the classroom. That's what teachers are trained for, to adapt education, pedagogies, to resolve and identify what the needs of the students, of their communities are. But if we don't give them enough autonomy, enough agency, enough decision-making power, then it is not an attractive profession. You know, if it's not intellectually engaging and attractive, then we lose a lot of good professionals to other trades because they don't have the room to make the changes that they would like to change. And we saw that throughout the pandemic as well. It was the creativity, the innovation of teachers that actually sustained learning. But paradoxically, we do not give them enough agency in the classroom. So it does have to do, on the one hand, with the material, but there's also the symbolic conditions of learning, which are very important. Now, we need, in terms of making the profession more attractive, what are some of the measures that are being implemented in different countries to make the profession more attractive? First, it has to do with bringing the newer generations that do not want to become teachers, because of this low status that the profession has had before. So it has to do with attracting new talents, and for them to attract, we need to transform the way teaching is organized, teaching is conceived of, particularly in different countries. If you tell the teacher what to teach, when to teach it, how to teach it, when to teach it, I will supervise you so you should teach it, and I will evaluate you and make sure that you teach it, there's very little room for creativity and for innovation, and then we have the perpetuation of So when that happens, then creativity goes out of the window. And if there's something that we want in teachers is that decision-making, that creativity to bring it into the classroom. Now, that comes together with a prerequisite, which is teacher education and professional development needs to be solid and good, so that teachers actually have all the necessary tools that they need to actually transform education. So on the one hand, attracting youth, on the other hand, retaining the teachers that are there, and again with the symbolic conditions, this has to do with a change in mindset as to how we conceive of teachers. Not as implementers of curriculum, but teachers as public intellectuals. Teachers as researchers that produce knowledge in the classroom, that this knowledge is useful for them, for other teachers, for schools, for policy making, etc. So we need to think of teachers in a different way. That would help in terms of the status of teachers. Of course, there's the material, the remuneration, all of the international labor standards that should be complied with, but there's also the symbolic. And to me, the answer has to do with trusting what teachers do.
Sorry, a bit parenthesis here. Alunos, ouçam. O Apps are good, vocês podem se aproximar mais da tecnologia e já sabem, podem escolher a profissão de professores se admiram estes vossos professores que estiveram aqui. Ok? Não esqueçam. É uma profissão que vai ser muito interessante. Ok. Now, as almost always, I have a provocation. We know that a not debate in this time in Portugal is technology in schools or not technology in schools. Okay? And I have here something that I write. In the Education Summit last year, 141 countries, including Portugal, signed an international statement of commitment, a joint declaration that I read yesterday, okay, to transform and invest in their education systems. And the thing is, in the fourth item, coincidentally, the SDG number 4 is education, and is in the fourth item, says learning and digital transformation ensure free, open, and high-quality digital education contents and advanced digital citizenship and security. And the question is, how do you manage these statements with the last news about do not allow digital books, cellular phones, and computers inside schools?
I think the question is for me, right?
It's for, no.
It's for both. But
it's for both. It's for both.
You looked at me. So.
As he was the last one.
Of course. Okay. So, let's be clear. Using digital technology and digital gadgets is not a question of yes or no. Rarely, important things in our life is a question of yes or no. It's a question of how. I think that the main challenges for us in Portugal, probably in other places in the world, but I won't talk about that, is one, to teach our students how to use digital gadgets and digital technology that is available. It's not true that all young people know everything about technology or that they know everything about digital. They know more than us, most likely, more than me, that is for sure, but they don't know everything. They must be taught how to use it with a certain purpose, how to use it if you want me to say that for the good. That is one challenge. So to teach, it's as important today as it was in the past to know how to write and how to read. It's important today how to work with the technologies that are available today. That is one challenge. The second one is to use digital as a teaching tool. Not just because, that's no reason. When someone asks something and we say, why? Because, that's no reason, that's no answer. No, it's because we can do better and we can do more. If it is to do the same that we did with a book, it's better to use the book. But we know that the new technologies, we know that digital allows us as teachers, I'm a teacher as you know, to do more. So that's the second challenge, is to use the digital as a teaching tool. The third one is to refuse the idea that digital may replace teachers. No, it won't, because we must teach how to use it, and teachers are needed for that. Or that there is no need for learning, because I can learn by myself going to the Wikipedia, which, for example, is not something from where we can learn. We can have some information or some misinformation, we really don't know. And many of the students and young people don't know that. So we must avoid thinking that the new technologies will make it possible not to learn. We'll be learning until we die. And finally, that the digital will simply make it unnecessary to memorize things. No, we will go on having the need to memorize things. That is how we talk every day. It's because we memorize the words, the phrases, the type of language that we use. And the final one is to refuse or avoid, probably to avoid, the concept of technology as an end in itself with an inner value, without a set of values. Technology is not good or bad. Technology exists within the society. I told this many times in many different places, in some of the App for Goods initiatives as well. I'm going to say it again at the closing session in Portuguese. But technology is not in itself good or bad. It depends on what we do with it. So those, I think, are the main challenges that we are facing. And we all know that we are facing uncertainty and experimenting along the way. We know that we are going somewhere. We are not quite sure where that somewhere is, but we know that we can't stay where we are. And that is exactly what we are doing in Portugal. Every student has his or her own computer. More than 1 million laptops were given for our students. We introduced pilots with digital books, for example, and digital tests. And all this is being evaluated and assessed according with the results that those measures are achieving or not. Not with some kind of bias, not with some kind of wishful thinking. It depends on the results that are being, the results that we can see and we can evaluate, that we are going to decide. One thing is clear for me, going back doesn't seem a possible option, because technology is not stopping, technology is not going back. Going back is not an option. But how to proceed, that is quite open. How to do it, that is the question. And that's why we are discussing if digital tests should only be applied after a certain age or grade. There was an enormous discussion this year in Portugal with the digital tests in the 2nd grade. It is probably too early for students to be confronted with a digital test. That is at least my opinion as a citizen, not so much as a member of the government. That is different. We are also evaluating what is going on with the classes and the schools that are using digital books. And, for example, we are launching, this discussion is already taking place, a huge discussion about the use of phones, both in classrooms, but in the yards, in the corridors, during the breaks, and so on. And I must say this as the final word. As we didn't decide to do all this because Sweden or Norway or Finland or Singapore or any other country in the world was doing that, we are also not going back because some of them are having cold feet. We are going to learn with them. We are going to learn with their experience, as we know that they are learning with ours. So this is exactly the moment to make that assessment and to see if this is working. If so, we'll go on. If not, we'll have to have different measures. But one thing is clear, we are not going to stop using technology. Otherwise, I don't know how you would go back home today, for example.
It's your turn, Carlos. Watch out, that is not matter.
Okay, very good. No, I agree. I agree with what the Secretary said. I think it is very important to acknowledge that technologies are here to stay and that the digital transformation is not stoppable. But it is steerable. We need to steer the direction of that transformation, and not all the way around, which is something that is there's a big difference between following the trends and trying to cope and adapt with technology, and actually leading the use of technology ourselves. So, to me, one question that precedes the question of whether the use of technologies or not is a pedagogical question. And the question is, what for? And in the response to that particular question, we can find ourselves good uses of technology for pedagogical purposes, good uses of technology for accessibility and equality purposes, etc. But it's true, technology can be used in any one direction that might be detrimental to education itself and values and so on, or that could be helpful. So the question to me that precedes has to do with the purpose of education and how we actually use these tools, like many other technologies, to fulfill that purpose. So for example, I would say one can think of many purposes of education, and formal education has been traditionally focused on one, which is qualification. Gaining knowledge, skills for employment, for life, and for many other purposes. And often enough, one sees the technological programs to do that, you know, or Wikipedia and the internet that has the content, or to teach mathematics, or etc. But I think education is beyond knowledge and goes beyond qualification. A very important part of education and the purpose of it is socialization, because we are social beings, because we live in societies, in communities together. And sometimes the activities about socialization are actually undermined by technologies as an individual endeavor, everybody with their own gadget device, and not even talking to people on the street because they're continuing with their gadget. Nonetheless, during the pandemic of COVID-19, we realized that technologies could be sources for community engagement, because people couldn't leave their houses and they couldn't travel in different countries, and because, etc. And because the schools were closed in many countries for 2 years, for 2 years and a half. So of course that was the way of sustaining education. But that was also the way of building communities, for example, between teachers. So technologies can also not only, let's say, serve the purpose of qualification, but also of socialization, which is a very important purpose of education. Virtual communities, communities of practice, of engagement, that already exist. We've seen and we continue to see the displacement of education into different spaces. So it's not only a matter of the house. We knew that many years ago in terms of lifelong learning, the role of the community, the public space, the library, the museum, and different places that are educational in themselves. And now we see the power of technology of bringing all of those environments together. So there is a lot of promise, but there is some peril in how we use technology. And finally, the issue of subjectification. And I think that is an important one. How do we form, education forms identities. It helps shape identity. And now, for that purpose, we see now that there are different challenges by the multiple identities one can have or change within the use of technologies as well. You were mentioning a very important example in gaming, Joao, but there are many examples as to how the shaping of identities is also important. But at the end of the day, I would say, of course, technologies are important for education. They're a powerful tool as long as we steer technologies in our own terms. As long as we do with technologies what we want to do with education. So to me, it has to do with the qualification, with the socialization, with the subjectification, the formation of identities, the formation of a sense of belonging to a community, to a planet, and the responsibility for oneself, for others, and for the planet. So I would say that.
Thank you very much. I think we have an agreement. Please, all that are here can share for your networks that we are agreed on the role of technology on schools. Now we are reaching the end. Just a challenge in 2 minutes for each of you, okay? A message to these fantastic students that were here during one school year doing Apps for Good and the fantastic work that you saw outside. And I would like very much that you can saw all the teams that were in all the competition and in the regionals, but we cannot do it. Then a message to the students and a message to these fantastic teachers that teach us, that are making this project, that teaching is really beautiful. A message in 2 minutes for both of them?
Probably less. The first thing is that what we do matter. What each teacher does in each classroom matters. And we know that all those teachers that are here and all the teachers that are teaching their students all around the country and all around the world are great professionals. And that is my respectful thank you to all the work that you do, sometimes in different conditions, sometimes not so much, but that is the first thing that I'd like to say. And to the students is the same thing. What you do matter. We saw some of your works in the outside, some of them made by very young children. They are children. One of them was 11, and they are already thinking on the problems that they want to solve, because we are unfortunately going to leave those problems for them to solve. So we are counting on you. You know, we know that you can do it. I'm sorry for what we did wrong, but I'm sure that together we'll do it better. Thank you.
From my side, maybe just to say that what I saw outside in the marketplace and the different apps, I saw two things. One that Antonio has mentioned before, which is the willingness to solve problems of the community. So I would encourage you to continue to think of how you can contribute to the solutions that the world needs. There are many problems that the world has, And we need all of the minds and all of the hearts and all of the spirits thinking of those solutions. The second thing I saw at the marketplace, and whenever I approach one of the panel for the apps, is that it was more than one student. It was 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 that were explaining the app, which speaks of course of the work in collaboration. And I think that is something important. I think an important message, I would say, in terms of the history of the humankind, but that we want to instill in education, is that collaboration will always thrive over competition. So collaboration. So the message would be that. The message would be to continue to collaborate, to continue to explore for teachers pedagogies of solidarity, pedagogies of working together, pedagogies of helping one another, because at the end of the day, that is what actually makes the solutions that are fit to all, that everybody is happy with, that everybody is comfortable with. So I just very much would urge you and would encourage you to continue to work together in envisioning solutions for the common problems of the world. Thank you.
And that's it. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much, both of you. It was a privilege for me to have you here, and I hope to see you again in next year. And now the show continues. Thank you very much.